All right, welcome back, everyone. It feels good to be home. We're here for another new season of the Commanders Film Room. I'm your host, George Carmi, with my co-host, Mark Bullock. Definitely give us a like on YouTube and subscribe to the Big Doug and Carmi Show. All this great content can be found on Mark Bullock's Substack, Mark Bullock's Film Room, which was fantastic as well. Mark, it's good to see you, man. How you been?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Looking forward to the summer, or we're wrapping up on the summertime. You have real football on the agenda right now, so definitely very interesting. To all our subscribers that were, watching our show, we took a little break. There's some downtime in June, but some big news as well. Mr. Mark Bullock got married this summer, so congratulations on that, Mark. From my heart to yours. Hopefully, you're very, welcome, happy home so far. Has there any big things happened so far with the marriage or anything, like any travels or honeymoons or anything like that so far?
Nothing huge so far. Obviously, the wedding itself was fairly big, so that was the big event so far of the year. We're hoping to get away for a little bit of a honeymoon in a few weeks here, just before the start of the season. But yeah, pretty decent start to married life. Yeah.
Yeah, good little year 2025. So congratulations, Mark, on that. Before we get into our film breakdown today we're going to be talking about our tight ends. We're looking at Ben Sinnott, John Bates. Mark, I want to throw it to you. We had our first joint practice of the year. We had the Commanders going against the Patriots. I'm just curious, we have some limited information from the limited game film that we have, but I'm curious, was there something you were looking forward to watching or hearing about from training camp? And what was your takeaway from so far from today?
Yeah, well, it's always tough, especially as that it looked like the Patriots were going to live stream the whole thing, and then they shut it off just before the teams actually start playing.
Yeah.
So that was tough. But yeah, I was obviously the big thing when teams come together in joint practices is the offensive line, the defensive lines, and seeing how the guys in the trenches do. That's always the big thing to see, and it sounds like it depends on which reporters you listen to, but it sounds like the Commanders' starting offensive line did a pretty decent job, and Larry Tunsil obviously had a good day, as you would kind of expect him to, and Connolly won a few battles, which is promising. There was no Brandon Coleman, which he missed time last year, injured as well. So hopefully that's nothing serious, but. Yeah, that's always the thing I'm always looking forward to whenever you see joint practices, and obviously the start of the preseason game, you want to see the guys up front get physical and really get into it. You can see somewhat how the receivers and the DBs are doing in normal practices without pads and with pads. So you get a better feel for where they're at, but you never really know where the guys in the trenches are at until pads are on and they're really thumping against someone that's not on their own team. So that's what I was looking out for, and it sounds like there was some good progress for the Commanders in that regard today.
Absolutely. I was looking for the defensive backs. I've been really intrigued by Trey Amos. I know we broke him down in our film breakdown earlier this year. You had me very intrigued about his upside, his potential, his fit here in Washington. It seems like he's having a seamless transition so far. I'm really happy with that. Also, Marshawn Lattimore, I think he's the key to really elevating our defense. I think in Washington, if he can return a form to what he was the past couple of years, what we know of as Marshawn Lattimore, I think that could really elevate us to maybe a championship level team in the future. So I'm definitely keeping my eye on that. We have one more day of joint practice tomorrow with the game on Friday. I guess, Mark, my last question to you before we jump into our film study is, this Friday is going to be a lot of backup players, a lot of, role players on the team. Has there been anybody under the radar that you're intrigued by that you're going to be maybe potentially looking for on Friday?
I don't know about under the radar. I think a lot of people are catching on to Tyler Owens at safety, and he's seemingly been getting a fair few reps with the starting unit, certainly with the second team, and that would suggest that there's some progress there, and some intrigue there in a guy that was a freakish athlete last year, signed as an undrafted free agent, and did a really nice job on special teams last year, and at the very least should be a special teams contributor again this year. But taking a step forward and being able to contribute on defense with his size, he fits the prototype for what Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. do with that kind of hybrid safety linebacker body type, that kind of 6 foot to 6'3", 200 to 220 pound kind of guy. He fits right in that mold, and we saw at the start of training camp, the first few days of training camp, there was reports of him, even covering the slot, playing the nickel position, which is really interesting, seeing him in there. But certainly, that would suggest that maybe he could do some things as a strong safety, kind of down in the box, or guarding tight ends in coverage and that kind of thing. So that's a guy I'm intrigued to see. He went undrafted, so there's reasons he went undrafted. But it's intriguing to see a year on how he's developed and whether he could be someone that could be a contributor on defense this year.
Absolutely. I think there's an easy path for him to potentially get some playing time too. Like, they ever played. I actually like Jeremy Chin. I thought he had some upside. I thought he brought some physicality to the strong, the strong safety position. Maybe he wasn't always 100% effective in run fits or maybe pass coverage, but there's definitely a hole open there. Will Harris offers a high floor as a veteran presence, but I think Tyler Owens has that more intriguing athletic upside. So I'm definitely curious about where he's going to fit. So I can definitely see that. I thought you were going to go with Krosky Merritt, where everyone's favorite running back right now. I thought we were going to go with him, but I think all of us are looking up for him there. What's up, Kev? How you doing, man? So, Mark, we're about to transition into our film study today. So we were kind of brainstorming offline, and our conversation landed on the tight end room. So I'm kind of curious, what are we going to watch today, and what are we getting into?
Yeah, so the two topics that everyone knows, Zach Ertz is tight end one, and he has a great kind of connection with Jaden Daniels, and it seems like in training camp and even in the joint practices today that they're continuing that. So I thought we'd look a little bit behind Zach Ertz at the other two guys. In the offseason, the two kind of most common questions I got about the tight ends is, one, why is John Bates being paid so much when he's just a blocking tight end? And two, what happened with Ben Sinnott in his rookie year? And why did he not play as they kind of would have expected from a second round pick? And so I thought we'd look into those two questions and dig into what they both did well, maybe where they can improve a little bit, and just talk about their situations overall going into this year. So we'll start with Ben Sinnott. And because he's the one that everyone wanted to talk about most, and he had, you would call it a disappointing season based on what his production was. I think it was something like 5 catches in his rookie year, and a second round pick, you want them to be getting more than 5 catches. But the thing I would point out to is that Zach Ertz had that fantastic connection with Jaden Daniels. He was going to be the number one catching option from the tight end position throughout the whole season, as long as he was healthy. And Ertz proved that he had that spot on merit. So you weren't going to put Sinnott in instead of Ertz at any point last year as a receiver. It would only be if you want to do 2 tight end sets. And when you want to do 2 tight end sets, typically you want to run the ball and have a good blocker in. So John Bates would come in because Bates was the more established blocker. So that put Sinnott in a kind of tough spot where he wasn't going to play as a receiver over Ertz, and he wasn't going to play as a blocker over Bates, which meant his playing time was kind of limited and his opportunities were kind of limited. But that didn't mean he didn't have an impact at all. I actually thought he developed really nicely as a blocker over the course of the year. And I think that he proved he could be a good piece on this offense as a blocker, and we'll see how the receiving comes on, and we'll get to that. But I thought the first point to make was he was a really good blocker. And go ahead.
Sorry, just to that point, I think you kind of encompass and kind of summarize the argument pretty well, right? I think people are intrigued by Ben Sinnott with that second round draft capital. They want to see something more, and some of the highlights he had for Kansas State was yards after catch and running after catch, like almost like a Chris Cooley build. People are pretty interested in seeing something like that. A little bit of an insight that I have, being a season ticket holder, I went to a film study with our tight end coach, David Ray, as well as David Blau, and they just raved about John Bates. I don't know what incentive they had behind that, but they were like, John Bates is the best blocking tight end in the league. We're proud to have him. And like when I went to film study, I thought it was going to be Jaden Daniels. First 10 minutes was John Bates blocking before we even got to Jaden Daniels. So whatever they're seeing, you're seeing too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I've definitely got a good half of this show on John Bates blocking, so we'll definitely come to that, and you'll see why Sinnott wasn't above Bates in that role. But I think Bates as this kind of second tight end, kind of hybrid fullback, H-back kind of role, proved that he could be a really good blocker. And this is from quite early in the year. I think this was week 4 they played the Cardinals last year. And Sinnott's in here as the second tight end. They're running a sweep play, so they're pulling center Tyler Biotish outside. They're pulling, this is left guard Nick Allegretti outside to the edge. They're pulling right guard Sam Cosmi also out to the edge. They're trying to pin everyone down inside, and Sinnott is going to arc around this guy on the edge and lead the way for Jeremy McNichols. And we'll just roll it through, and you'll see they hand this ball off. Sinnott works up to the safety at the second level. They get Allegretti kicks out the edge. Cosmi kind of wraps around. Allegretti gets a little bit bumped, but he does enough job to knock this guy over, which allows McNichols to kind of bounce it. And that's where Sinnott's block becomes key, because he doesn't hit this hole and hit it inside. He bounces it to the outside, which means Sinnott gets a little bit more of a tricky job because he's in space. You can see all this space out here, and he's against the guy that's probably more athletic than him, that could fake one way and dive inside, or fake inside and dive outside, and make it really tough for him. But he does a real nice job getting square on him, not slowing down. He goes straight up to him, gets his hands on him, he adjusts. You can see he did that little dart outside, and Sinnott does a really nice job getting engaged and then forcing him out to the sideline. He understands, okay, he wants to go to the outside. That means my back is running that way. I need to force him out further to the outside and give McNichols a chance to cut this back inside. And you can see he does exactly that. He takes the guy outside, blocks him out, and that gives McNichols that chance to go and end up scoring. So that was a really nice block. Now, another thing they did really well was they put him in the backfield and used him kind of as a fullback H-back hybrid. And especially on these kind of read option type plays, he was really effective. So this was against Dallas much later in the year. And this is a read option run where they've got Jane Daniels obviously in the pistol. I think it's Austin Eckler in the backfield as the running back, and you've got Sinnott as this kind of fullback tight end H-back hybrid position. And what they're going to do is they're going to run a kind of, I think it's a zone play inside this way, but you're going to have Bates here. He's going to arc around the defensive end that's being read by Jaden Daniels, and he's going to go block a linebacker. And then you're going to have Sinnott, who's going to act like he's sifting across to block this guy, and then arc around him and go block this defender on the edge. And Jaden Daniels is going to read this defender. If he crashes inside, Jaden Daniels is going to pull it. If he works to the edge, Jaden Daniels is going to hand it off inside. So that's where we go. When you see the defender kind of holds his position and is kind of ready to crash down inside, you can see Bates has got outside of him. You can see Sinnott is sifting towards him and acting like he's going to block him. So he's kind of holding his position. He's not moving either way. And Jaden Daniels thinks, okay, I can outrun this guy to the edge. I've got Sinnott. You can see Bates has got a nice block. I've got Sinnott working up to this DB. I'm going to pull this and keep it. Realistically, he could have handed it off and had a hole. But, these guys were kind of working over the top and ready to fill that. But you can see why Jaden Daniels is pulling it, especially as this guy's kind of having his ankles broken by Jaden Daniels keeping it and running it. But the point here is Sinnott. He goes and blocks this guy on the edge, and he goes and just bulldozes into the ground and gives Jaden Daniels that clear path. So, and we'll just see it again from this angle. You can see how he does a nice job just going and knocking the guy over and giving Jaden Daniels that clear path to the edge. And that safety over the top nearly got there. If Sinnott hadn't knocked that guy to the ground, there's every chance that safety makes a play and saves a touchdown. Now, it still would have been a nice game, but that block from Sinnott was key because it gave Daniels that space to accelerate and get to that corner of the end zone and score. So those kind of blocks can be the difference between, a good run and a touchdown, and a great run. So, but more on him as a blocker. This is another slightly different position. Again, this is that kind of H-back hybrid spot where he's kind of as a tight end, but kind of just off the line of scrimmage, just behind them. And this is him doing a sift block where he's sifting back across the line of scrimmage and he's going to kick out this defensive end. And what you're going to see here is a two-play sequence that actually happened back-to-back 2 plays in the game. So this was the first play. The next play was the very next play in the actual game. And so the first one, you're going to see him sifting across and kicking out this defensive end or this edge player on the backside. And it doesn't really matter what happens. The point is, he does that sift across, he makes that block, and they run this ball inside, and they pick up a nice gain, and he fights that block really well. But what having him do that kind of thing does is it opens up more stuff for the run game. So remember, the very last play, they lined up in this exact look, and they showed Sinnott sifting across and blocking this guy. On the very next play, they run a read option play from the exact same look, and this time this defender thinks, okay, I see the exact same formation. I see Sinnott is going to sift back across towards me. I must be getting the same play. I'm going to get blocked again. So he's going to dive inside to try to stop Sinnott kicking him out. But what actually is happening is Sinnott's going to arc around him, fake block him, arc around him, and lead the way for Jaden Daniels to keep it on the edge. And this is just kind of being able to have this kind of tight end that can do this. You can see he's crashing down the line heavily, thinking it's the exact same run play that he's just seen. And then suddenly Sinnott arcs around him, and Jaden Daniels keeps it and runs to the edge. Cameraman just about keeps up. And Sinnott goes and fights nicely and goes and makes some more blocks. And Jaden Daniels, there's the first down marker. Jaden Daniels goes and gets well beyond that first down marker. So that's having that kind of tight end that it seems like it's not an important role. It's not like this, he's just sifting across and kicking out defensive end, or he's sifting across and arcing around. But the kind of bind that puts a defensive end in, think back to that 2012 year with RG3, when the first time when Kyle Shanahan was having guys do this, and defensive ends had no idea how to play the Commanders or Washington at that point. They just didn't know, do I rush up the field like I normally would? Could that guy be coming across to kick me out? Is he coming across to arc around me on a read option? Is it a play action and it's all being made to look like that? And defensive ends just were so slow off the snap, they just had no idea what to do. And you can see the kind of binds that
it puts them in a bind. I'm going to say that. That's all I'm going to say, Mark. And I saw it most notably with the Cowboys player number 99 in that first clip that you sent. Like, I felt bad for that guy. Not too bad because he's a Cowboy, but at the same time, he was by himself on an island where, one play, Sinnott and Bates ran right by his face, potentially blocking him, but fake blocking him and leaving him on an island for Jaden Daniels running right by him. So it definitely puts a defensive end at a unfavorable position.
Exactly. So yeah, it doesn't feel like it's a big role, and it's certainly not the role that Sinnott would have necessarily wanted. Being a second round pick, he probably would have wanted a little bit more of a more involved role as a pass catcher. But those kind of blocks were key. They're really important to the overall schematics of the offense with Jaden Daniels in the run game. And it helps set up things like play action. So this, you can see Sinnott again here is in a very similar situation. And this is the kind of things that we did see him when he was on the field and when he got pass catching opportunities. It was often because he had done those sift blocks so well. He again is faking that kind of sift back across the line of scrimmage to block the defensive end, and then instead of blocking him, he works out to the flat as a check down option. These were kind of the situations where you'd see him most in passing situations. It would be play action designed to look like the run, and he sifts across again, and you can see how he would be. This defensive end is crashing inside quite heavily, so he doesn't really have an effect here. But you can see how if a defensive end was on the edge, he's thinking, am I getting that sift block again? Is he arcing around? Is Jaden Daniels keeping it and running it? What exactly am I doing? It can slow down the pass rush. And like you can see, these guys are still at the line of scrimmage when the play has started going a few seconds ago. So it can have that impact. He works out to the flat, and then he's just a check down option. So that kind of that was kind of the role that you'd see him in the passing game. It's just kind of that stiff to the flat, and you would obviously like to see that more, but you'd like to see him get involved more. But he's a check down option in those, and they're trying to hit, like we just saw, like a Noah Brown or Terry McLaurin on a deep over on those kind of things. So it still was a very important role within the offense, though, and this being able to do the dirty work was really important. This is another example of him doing the dirty work on play action. He's lined up outside of the receiver. He's going to motion inside, and both him and John Bates are going to chip on the edge. We saw this all of last year when they had Brandon Coleman at left tackle, when they had Andrew Wiley at right tackle. They struggled a little bit on the edges, so they would chip both edges to help those tackles out. And this is Trey Hendrickson here, and he's helping. I think this might actually be Cornelius Lucas in instead of Coleman at this point.
Looks like it. Yeah.
It's still the same principle. He's chipping on the edge and just working to the flat. It's doing the dirty work. It's not getting the touches he wanted, but he's still, doing a real key job for the team. And you can see just how much of an impact he has. He goes and makes that contact first. You can see Hendrickson still at the line of scrimmage. The defensive end on the other side has got a step forward, and they're kind of wondering, is it run, is it pass? And it really slows that rush down, and he stays attached for a good while there before Lucas has to get onto it. So it's the dirty work, but it's important because you can see, look at this clean pocket for Jaden Daniels to go and fire this ball down the field to Terry McLaurin.
Great play.
And that doesn't happen without Sinnott doing the dirty work of getting in and making this chip on Hendrickson. And it's more than just a chip. It's a good initial block and really helps Cornelius Lucas and give Jaden Daniels that time to hit that throw down the field. So, it's not the kind of things he would have wanted, but they were starting to, down the stretch, develop a little bit more of these kind of play action passes where Sinnott could get the ball. And in like this one against the Giants later in the year, is the classic John Gruden play, the spider 3Y banana. You've got Sinnott acting as the fullback here, and it's going to be looking like it's meant to be power, where he's going to be kicking out a defensive end and they're handing off the ball to the running back inside of him. But he's actually going to fake blocking and work out to the flat, just like we've seen on quite a lot of these plays. And the running back's going to replace him. And it's third and short, and you have the tight end here. John Bates is going to run the banana route. Essentially, you're always throwing this to the fullback because the fullback's always open. That's the way John Gruden always used to say. And you get that play action fake. You get the running back cutting the defensive end instead of Sinnott. Sinnott's going to work out to the flat, and you can see all this space down here for him. And this is the kind of thing that Sinnott excelled at in college. He plays where you got the ball in his hands, as you talked about earlier. He was a yards after catch guy. He wasn't this amazing route runner. He had a nice feel for sitting down in zone and stuff, and finding little soft spots. But he wasn't some guy that would stem up a linebacker or a safety in coverage and really stick them with a hard move and shake them with a good route. He wasn't a Jordan Reed that could cross guys over. He was a guy that you'd find him in space and let him go to work after the catch. And this is exactly that kind of situation. You hit him in the flat, he makes the adjustment to the catch and then turns up the field and picks up yards after the catch. So that's the kind of thing that maybe this season we'll perhaps see a little bit more from him. We'll perhaps see him a little bit more in the passing game.
Let me ask you a quick question, Mark, if you don't mind me interrupting you. Yeah. So I was curious, so actually I asked David Ray this too when I saw him at the film study. With the addition of Tunsil and Connerly, we have some pretty stout left tackles now and right tackles. Now we have pretty sound protection. I'm curious, do you think Washington will still rely on 12 personnel or 13 personnel, or even have Ben Sinnott even getting onto the field as much? Or do you think, what do you predict his role will be in the future? Because I feel like we have more of maybe we can be more spread with our better offensive line, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a goal of these moves with the offensive line, is to be able to be more flexible and get into more sort of spread out offenses with more receivers. But I think you can, the beauty of having flexible tight ends, guys like Zach Ertz, and if Sinnott can take a step forward as a receiver, if you go into a 12 personnel situation with their ability to go up tempo, no huddle, you can force mismatches on the field. So if the defense matches up, it's like, okay, you've got two tight ends on the field, we're going to go with our base defense. You can then get to the line of scrimmage and go, okay, they're in their base, we'll spread everyone out. We'll split Sinnott out into the slot. We'll split Zach Ertz out into the slot. We'll go empty. We'll put the running back outside, and we'll spread out the defense. We'll get mismatches in their personnel, and we'll rip them apart that way. And just as easily, if the defense is like, okay, well, we can't play our base defense against their 12 personnel anymore, they'll switch to nickel. In which case, you bunch up and do this kind of thing where you've got two tight ends attached to the line of scrimmage, and you run the ball down their throat because they've got a lighter personnel. So that having those tackles, that I think they might try to help Josh Connolly out early in the season with some more chips and stuff. You obviously with Tunsil, you trust, you know, his body of work in the NFL. You think, well, we can trust him a little bit more. We definitely don't need to be chipping that side anywhere near as often as they were. So that should free up a tight end or receiver to run proper routes a little bit more. So that's definitely what they have in mind. But I don't think it means that they'll just go away from 12 personnel at all. I think if anything, it means they can lean into it more, and just when they get those matchups, it's like, okay, they've got their base defense on. They can go into completely spread formations where they've got everyone spread outside. They've got the running back, both tight ends spread outside. Nobody's attached at all. Empty backfield. And
because the offensive line is strong enough to withstand
exactly. You can trust that Tunsil and Connolly are gonna be able to hold their edge as well, and that gives you the matchup issues. You know, if you put Sinnott and Ertz outside and a running back outside, and you put Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel inside, if the defense is going to play some sort of zone, that means a linebacker is going to be on Deebo or Terry McLaurin. So that's the kind of matchups issues that you can create by using 12 personnel. So that's I don't think they'll get away from their 12 personnel. I think they'll use that still. I think the additions of the offensive line just means that they can get into more things because they can trust those tackles a little bit more. So yeah, where were we? Last few Sinnott plays. I think this was Sinnott's touchdown catch. So this was his one touchdown catch from the season. And again, it's that exact same situation that we've been talking about, where he's lined up as a tight end. It's kind of a play action pass, and he runs that little sift, faking like he's going to block on the edge, and works out to the flat. And you know, he comes open in the flat, basically wide open, and this is Marcus Mariota in at this point, and flips that little pass for the touchdown, nice and easy. And you'd like to see him get more of these opportunities next year, perhaps. I think I included this angle just to see that little touchdown dance that he does at the end. Where he gets, here's the mascot coming in to do that little touchdown. Yeah, nice. There they are doing that little touchdown dance. But that wasn't to say that he didn't have any opportunities. Like, they never trusted him at all as a receiver. They did have one or two plays where he was in the game as a receiver, and he was one of the primary options. The ball just didn't get to him for one reason or another. And this was from that Bengals game week 3. So this was quite early on in the year. And this is the type of play that CJ Stroud with the Texans did a ton in his rookie year. Like, they did this like maybe 5 or 6 times in his rookie year, and they had an explosive play every time. And the idea is you fake a zone play to one side, you roll the quarterback out like he's going to roll out and on a bootleg. And typically on a bootleg play, you've got someone in the flat, you've got someone a little bit deeper, and someone intermediate, all on the side that the quarterback's rolling out to. And what the Texans would do is they would have one receiver run back across the formation and have the quarterback roll out, hold up, and throw it back across the formation. And it was a really explosive play for them. And Cliff obviously saw that and was like, well, that worked for that rookie QB that year. We're going to take some of that. And this was Sinnott's opportunity to have that exact thing. Jaden Daniels just doesn't get to him. So we'll see it here. We're going to fake that run. He's going to roll out on a bootleg. You can see all the defense is starting to flow out that way, thinking it's a bootleg. We've got to cover this side of the field. You can see Sinnott is getting up, and this safety is thinking, I've got McLaurin bursting down the field here. I've got Sinnott looking like he's going to run a sail route. So I need to start getting out here. You can see his hips and his feet are already turned to run towards that sideline. And there is absolutely nobody on this side of the field down here.
Wow.
And what happens is Sinnott breaks back out that way. And suddenly this safety is in panic mode, like, okay, where am I going? And there's nobody over on this side of the field. And you can see Jaden Daniels starts to pull up and wants to throw this. But this is obviously his 3rd game of the year, 3rd game of his NFL career. He's feeling a little bit of this pressure coming around him. So instead of pulling up and just throwing that ball, like I think he could do quite easily, he's got 5 yards of space. He could have just pulled this up and threw this back here. And he could have just led Sinnott away from this safety coming backwards and had a huge gain. Instead, he opts to keep the ball himself and run it, which, 3rd game of his career, I'm not going to kill him for that. He goes and picks up a first down, so it's not the end of the world. But that just shows the kind of opportunity that there were 2 or 3 of these plays early in the year. Again, you can see that safety had got flipped around. Sinnott has got all this space over here. If Jaden had seen that or felt like he had the time to hit that, then there was a potential explosive play. And as I say, there were 2 or 3 times, maybe even 3 or 4 times early in the year that I can remember where they had Sinnott on those kind of plays. And again, it was just Jaden being a young rookie quarterback, didn't quite see him, or the protection didn't quite hold up, and didn't quite click the right way, and they kind of just went away from it later in the year. But I think those are things that could be opportunities, especially as we talked about with both Bates and Sinnott being such good run blockers. If you have those guys in on what looks like a running play and you run that kind of play action pass, Sinnott is athletic enough, as we just saw, to take advantage of that and get down the field.
It's funny how narratives are developed, Mark. It's like if Ben Sinnott hits that 40, 50-yard slash right there in the third game of the season, maybe the fans wouldn't be so tough on him, or maybe he would get some more opportunities for other shots down the league. It's just funny how things work out, but I totally get it. Jaden Daniels' third game, I think it was Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, primetime game, a lot on his shoulders, and he still got the first down, so he can't complain one bit there.
Yeah, exactly.
One quick follow-up, though, Mark. So I'm intrigued. It's been a long time since you and I have done film study. This might be kind of a bogus question, but I'm going to give you some time to think. How would you describe the concepts of our offense, right? Are we kind of like a deep strike kind of offense? Because I think Cliff's narrative is that we throw a lot like around a line of scrimmage, a lot of screens, a lot of more of like a horizontal offense. But it's funny watching these clips and watching some of these bigger plays. It seems like Sinnott's he was more of like the flat third option, while there is plenty of build-ins for deep shots on the field. So how would you describe our offense, if that makes any sense?
The offense was a little bit more traditional than what people would think.
Okay.
And that because they did so much up tempo and no huddle and get lined up real quick and go real fast, because they did so much of that, it caused a lot of confusion, and the defense couldn't get themselves set, and they couldn't match up the way they would necessarily want to. And that was all kind of the smoke and mirrors of everything. When you strip that back and you just watch the actual plays, they were probably a run-first team based on having a running quarterback, and they had some real good run schemes installed, and they had some real diverse run schemes, and they made use of the fact that Jaden Daniels is a real weapon as a runner, and the read option stuff, and then they built off of that really nicely into the play action stuff, and when they had to, they could spread out and do this kind of quick passing game. They didn't really take too many shots down the field. I think that's something they want to get to, and a large part of that is the kind of protection stuff that we talked about. Like they felt like if they wanted to take those shots down the field, they would have to keep 2 tight ends in, they'd have to run play action, they'd have to chip heavily, and that really limits the amount of receivers that can actually go down the field. Whereas this year, now that they've got Tunsil and Connolly, and you think that obviously Connolly is a rookie and you might have to help him out, but you're trusting Tunsil a lot more. When you get Cosme back into full health and Biotish in its center, and Coleman, if he takes that step at guard, you feel a lot better about that group being able to block without as much assistance. And that means you can free up other guys to go into routes and work more down the field and run more of those deeper concepts. But I feel like they couldn't really get into that without doing the kind of play action stuff that we've seen, or as I say, the big lots of chipping, and then when you're chipping both edges, those guys aren't running proper routes; they're just running to the flat. So that really limits what you can do from a passing game standpoint. I think that's what we'll see them develop this year.
Evolution makes sense.
Yeah. So one last one, and this one isn't actually Ben Sinnott. This is actually John Bates, and I've got this clip later on for Bates as well, but. This is something that I felt like they could have done a little bit more with Sinnott, and this comes from that playoff win against the Lions. This is that crucial play late in the game. I think it was like 3rd and 4, something like that, and they were trying to run out the clock, and Ben Sinnott comes in. He motions into the backfield as a kind of fullback H-back, and they run a little sail route with him from the backfield. And it's a really nicely designed play, and it looks like he's going to block. I'll just run this through. It looks like he's going to block, and they're going to run the ball, and you can see the Lions all kind of dive up to the line of scrimmage and think he's going to block, and it's a run play, but it's actually play action. And you can see this linebacker and this linebacker both kind of leave Bates to just run straight through. and you have McLaurin on the outside clearing out the corner. The safety's got a little bit too nosy on the run fake, and that's going to leave John Bates wide open down the field here. And you can see obviously past that first down marker, and they pick up that key first down. He makes a nice grab. But that kind of play you could do more often with a guy like Ben Sinnott, because we saw Ben Sinnott did a really nice job from that kind of fullback, H-back hybrid position. You could do those little play action fakes where it's just adjusting where that route is coming from. Like that's just a sail route, and typically you have that from the slot or a normal tight end position, and instead they adjusted it and put it in the backfield from a kind of fullback position. So that you can, I think if they want to get Sinnott some more touches and more involved from the positions that he's comfortable in, I think that's something they could do a little bit more, and just let Sinnott do that kind of thing instead of Bates, because you're going to trust Sinnott to go and make those catches and pick up yards after the catch a little bit more than you would with John Bates. So I think there's a little bit more upside as a receiver there. So that would be something that they might look to do this year. As I say, I think they also will look to see Sinnott a little bit more in the passing game. I think with Zach Ertz, they're going to be a little bit more protective of him this year. Just, another year older, and
preservation.
They'll feel like Sinnott is probably a step further forward than he was last year, not quite as raw, and maybe on like first and second down, you'll see Sinnott more as the receiving tight end with Bates still as the blocking tight end. And when you go 12 personnel, you have them both on the field, and you give Zach Ertz a little bit of a breather from the blocking stuff. And then you can see Sinnott split out and run some routes on first and second down. Obviously, when you get to the money downs, third downs, fourth downs, in the red zone, that kind of thing, Zach Ertz comes back onto the field, and he's that key target for Jaden Daniels. But I think that's one way they can kind of work Sinnott into the offense a little more. So I think just to kind of wrap up on Sinnott before we transition to Bates, it's yes, it was somewhat of a disappointing return from his rookie year, but I wouldn't overlook what he was as a blocker. I think he had an important role as a blocker, and I think he developed nicely as a blocker, and he did a lot of the dirty work, and he showed the kind of team first mentality. We didn't hear any kind of complaints from him all year of being like, I've only got 5 catches. We didn't hear from him at all. He just got his head down and did his work and did a nice job in the run game and made some key blocks, as we saw on a lot of their explosive run plays. He was one of the key blockers, especially with the read option stuff and being the kind of lead blocker for Jaden Daniels on those read option keepers. So I wouldn't overlook the role that he did play. I think he had an important role. I would hope that would expand going forward, but we'll see. Obviously, Zach Ertz is rightly that number 1 receiving tight end. I think there is a path for him to get some more targets, but we'll see how that pans out. But then we can transition now into a little bit of John Bates. And Bates was someone that I think people kind of overlooked when they re-signed him, and people were kind of wondering, like, why are they paying this guy this much money, and what was the deal he got? Let me just scroll back up to where I had that info. Yeah, he had a 3-year deal worth $21 million with 11.5 fully guaranteed, which it's not top of the market tight end money, but it was around the 20th best tight end contract in the league. And so it's not nothing. It's a fairly significant deal, and especially for a guy that's just a blocking tight end. He didn't catch many passes either, right?
Yeah, I was curious how many. I'm gonna look up how many catches he had. I believe maybe 15, 20 wasn't that much. I
don't even think it was that much.
Okay.
I think I had that down somewhere as a note. 8 catches for 84 yards.
Okay, I'm gonna say, wow.
That was what he had. So people were like, why are we re-signing him? One of my readers actually said, can you break down why, when it happened, when the move was announced during free agency, they said, can you break down why they have opted to pay a blocking tight end so much money? And so it took me a few months to get around to it, but I did this post on John Bates back in early July, and it just, I want to show what he adds to the run game and why it's worth what they're paying him. And the first thing is he has the mentality of an offensive lineman. You see, he's not afraid to get nasty and mixed up with guys. So this first play, we'll see it's a short yardage play. I think it's a zone run inside, and Bates is here attached to the left tackle, Brandon Coleman. And their job here is they're going to combine on this technically defensive end in a 3-4 front. It's a defensive tackle, really. They're going to combine on him, and they want to work up to this linebacker number 6 in the middle. Now, normally, the way you would do this is these guys would block down, and then this linebacker would probably fill inside, and Coleman would peel off and pick him up. But what you're going to see is this the run is going to bounce back out to the left here, and this linebacker is going to read that well and try to go over the top and get outside, and Bates is going to make a really nice read to peel off the block and go make the block himself instead of Coleman getting it. So we'll run this through, and you can see Bates does a really nice job helping Coleman here, and Coleman's looking to peel off to go get that linebacker, but this linebacker has eyes in the backfield, and he can see there's Ben Sinnott's actually sifting back across, and there's a threat of Jaden Daniels keeping it, and the running back just cutting it backwards. So he's actually looking to go over the top. And Bates, you can see, is while he's making the block on the defensive tackle and helping Coleman, who's not really engaged with this bigger defensive tackle, Bates has still got his eyes on that linebacker and looking for him to loop over the top. And so what he does when he sees that linebacker coming over the top, he can read, okay, this run is cutting back this way. And you can see actually Eckler's inside here. He's got the ball, but he's going to cut this back behind his blockers here. And Bates does a nice job peeling off and getting engaged with that linebacker. Now, this is a bit of a hold. He does get away with
that. Yeah.
But if you're not called, it's not a hold, right?
Exactly right.
And offensive linemen are going to do that. Now, this guy is going to get angry about getting held, but Bates does a nice job getting his other hand on, getting engaged. You can see that the jersey is being pulled a little bit. This guy, I don't know what this ref is looking at really, but what you see is Bates and this linebacker get into a bit of a fight, and you can see he's blocking him this entire way. You can see that linebacker is not happy, and they end up getting into a bit of a scuffle, and they go down to the ground, and Bates has still got his hand on that jersey, holding him down, and they're fighting through the ground, and they start having a fight, and that becomes a penalty.
And just for the record, it's important to note that's Patrick Queen, by the way. That's an all-pro linebacker. That's a big
not
acquisition.
A bad linebacker. That's a very athletic linebacker, and
Exactly
that's
right.
why it was hard for him to stay engaged with that. But that just kind of shows that offensive line mentality. I don't think, as much as Zach Ertz is a really good player, I don't think Zach Ertz is going to engage on a block like that and fight the guy to the ground and then get on top of him and start fighting him like that. That's very much an offensive lineman's mentality, right? So that is the first point to note, is that he has kind of that offensive line mentality where he likes blocking. He likes going and knocking guys down and making blocks and being a part of the run game. So that, for a lot of tight ends in the modern game, not very many have that mentality, and that adds a lot. And I'll show exactly why that adds a lot. So the amount of things he brings to this run scheme is huge. So we're going to see 2 plays in a row where they're going to run the exact same concept, but he's going to do different responsibilities within that concept. So this is what you call a wham or a crunch scheme. It's kind of it's a extended trap play. So normally you'd have all the offensive linemen, like on a zone scheme, you'd see all the offensive linemen blocking in the same direction, and you'd see the tight end sifting back and kicking out the edge. On a power play, you'd have one guy pulling and the rest blocking down. On this one, what you see is the guards and the tackle are going to block inside, and they're going to trap these guys, whereas the center and the right tackle are going to work up to the second level. So you've got linemen working in different directions, and it's kind of confusing to try to fit as a defensive lineman. And Bates' role in this version is he's going to start as a tight end, and he's going to motion across to that kind of H-back, fullback spot that we talked about with Sinnott. And then on this play, he's going to kick out this defensive end. So we'll run that through, and you're going to see how that works. You see all these guys trapping. You see the right tackle in the center going up to the second level. You see these guys trapping back and knocking these guys back inside. And you can see Sinnott Bates kicking out, making a nice block. And suddenly this huge lane emerges for Brian Robinson, right? You've got these guys being pinned inside, and Bates is kicking out that guy, and that makes a big lane for Brian Robinson to go make a nice run.
It's a well-designed play.
Very well-designed play. Now, this is the exact same scheme, but run from a different look, and with Bates doing a completely different job. So last time, Bates lined up onto the right, and he sifted across, and he kicked out the defensive end. This time, he lines up on the left, And instead of Coleman blocking inside, Coleman's going to kick out on the edge, and Bates is going to replace him, trapping this 3 technique defensive tackle. Now the rest is going to be the same. You're going to see the right tackle and the center go up to the next level, and you're going to see these guys trap block on the outside to their right, and Brian Robinson's going to hit this in the same kind of area. But it's the same scheme. It's just run in a completely different way, because Bates is lining up here, and he's going to go trap this big, massive defensive tackle that's probably got 100 and 150 pounds on him, right? He goes and traps him. He fights hard. Now that guy does still get into the backfield, but Bates stays engaged, keeps his leverage, forces him inside, and gives Brian Robinson a chance to get by him. Now, Brian Robinson does a really nice job here. This threat defender is completely free. That's not on Bates. And Brian Robinson makes a nice cut, breaks through the tackle, and goes and finishes for the touchdown. So that's a great run from Brian Robinson. I think people do forget that he is capable of doing some nice things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on Brian Robinson? I know he's kind of a polarizing player for us.
Yeah, the short summary of it is he's better than what Commanders fans think he is. He's not some amazing top 5 NFL running back. He's a decently good running back. He's very serviceable, and he's probably certainly better than what he's probably being paid on what is still his rookie contract, the 4th year of a 3rd round pick or 4th round pick, whatever it was, contract. So he's better than what Commanders fans give him credit for, I think, at this point, generally speaking. But yeah, the point there, going back to Bates, was you saw that scheme. It was the same scheme, but he did different roles within it, and that was something that was obvious throughout the year. You saw it quite a lot from him. So that was a crunch scheme. This is another short yardage play, and this is an unbalanced line. So, and this was something they did quite a lot last year. You see John Bates is here. He's technically the left tackle, because you see here's the center, left guard Nick Allegretti, and Bates being the left tackle. And that's because Cornelius Lucas, no, this might be Coleman, has shifted from the left tackle spot to the right side. And the idea when you unbalance the line is you have more linemen over here, and you can run behind those guys to the right side. But because this is a short yardage play, Brian Robinson in the backfield here with Austin Eckler, Robinson's going to take that carry inside, and he's going to hit this. And John Bates is going to have to block this big defensive tackle, basically one-on-one. And he does a nice job. And you see he blocks him, he gets into that chest, he drives him down the line, he gives Robinson a chance to cut back inside of him. Again, Robinson's going to have to beat these guys unblocked, but he makes that cut inside, and you can see Bates does a really nice job driving that defender into the pile, washing him down the line, and giving Ryan Robinson that chance to go pick up that first down, which he did. So that was one unbalanced look, and we'll see it again this side. You can just see he drives that guy, washes him down the line. It's a really nice job, and that guy's probably 150 pounds heavier than him. real nice job. But this is another example of an unbalanced line. This time, John Bates is technically the right tackle with Andrew Wiley over on the left side. Now, this is one of their favorite run schemes. This is that GT counter play, where you pull both the guard and the tackle. Of course, John Bates is tight end, but he's playing the role of the tackle, and he's going to be the one that you're going to have Cosme pull and kick out, and John Bates is meant to pull and wrap around for the first linebacker, and they're going to read this guy, and if he crashes down, Daniels is going to keep it and run. If he holds his position, they're going to hand it off. And you'll see here, the guy holds his position, he kind of shuffles down the line, but then holds his position knowing that Jaden Daniels is a threat. So Jaden hands it off, and Brian Robinson takes it. Cosme gets his kick out block, and Bates wraps around and goes and blocks the linebacker, and you can see that seal created on that left side of the line. This defender gets over the top of Andrew Wiley, but Robinson does a nice job running behind, keeping himself kind of skinny in the hole, and goes and picks up a nice gain from it. So that's one version of their GT counter scheme, where Bates was technically the right tackle, pulling and working up to the second level and blocking a linebacker and creating a seal on the edge. This time, it's not an unbalanced line. This time, it's a normal line. So you've got your normal 5 offensive linemen, and Bates is playing his normal tight end role. But it's the same scheme. He's just doing a very different role within that scheme. And this time, he's going to do a nice job blocking this defensive end, making him kind of pause for a moment, giving Nick Allegretti that time to go and make that block when he pulls from that left side of the line. And then he's going to go up and get this linebacker on the second level. and they're going to have Brian Robinson do this little return motion, which is a really nice little wrinkle. And you can see Bates fake that block and then works inside. That gets the defensive end to kind of step up field and hold his spot and give Nick Allegretti time to go get there. But Bates is still able to get inside and go make this block and wash that linebacker down the line. You can see he washes him inside. And actually that leaves Coleman with basically nobody to block. He's got this guy out here that he can go try and block, but he doesn't really need to. And that gives Brian Robinson, you can see Bates pins that guy inside, and Brian Robinson's able to make that run inside of him and get up to the second level and take on a safety from deep. So that, again, shows how he's able to do, those are two different GT counter schemes, and he did two different roles within them. Like one, he was in an unbalanced line as the right tackle pulling to the edge. On the next play, it was the same GT counter scheme, but he was the tight end and he was blocking down inside and pinning guys inside. So it shows the flexibility that he has and brings to the run game. And it really can't be overplayed just how important that is to a run scheme, to have a tight end that can do so much. And this just, let me go back to my notes here. This one is just another example. There's in this Titans game, they did quite a lot of this little motion where they lined up in this formation, and John Bates would motion inside to that kind of H-back, fullback spot, and he would go and execute different blocks. And this just kind of shows that he can get to the same look and go do so many different blocks. So this time he's running a trap scheme, and he's going to motion inside, and he's going to trap this big three technique defensive tackle. This is Jeffrey Simmons, I think. So you're going to see he motions across, gets to that spot, and then he's going to go trap this guy. He's going to throw his whole body in there. Like it's not some like massive pancake block, but he's taking on an offensive tackle that's way bigger than him. He's going to go and create that lane for the running back to get inside and go pick up some nice yards. And
wow,
Chris Rodriguez was a nice one. So that was one example. Same game against the Titans. This time he lines up on the right side, but he does the same kind of idea, right? He's going to motion across to that same fullback H-back spot. And this time, instead of going for the defensive tackle, he's going to go and block this linebacker. Again, same idea, but they're just adjusting the side. He's on the right side instead of the left, and they're adjusting who he's blocking. So this time he's going to go block a linebacker, and it gives the defense a different look. And again, he goes and does, you would expect him to stand up a linebacker and hold that block a lot easier than he would against Jeffrey Simmons, because that linebacker is 100 pounds heavier. But he does a nice job, creates that lane. Unfortunately, the safety does a nice job of.
That's a great tackle. Yeah.
Play. But you can see that how that lane would have emerged if that safety was still deep, or if the receiver had gone and got that block before the safety made the read. But you have to give credit to the defense. Sometimes the safety made a nice play. But Bates. Sorry.
I'll say one thing that's exciting to me is that basically the fact that there's so much continuity, right? We have Bates doing all these. For one, the run game is very. I love watching this. This is eye opening to me. Very intricate, very detailed, very time based. What's exciting to me is that we're running it back, right? We have Cliff Kingsbury again one more time. We have Bates in the same system. Our offensive line, we added tons, which is an improvement, but the rest of our four are pretty we have Connerly as well, but for the most part, they play together as well. So there is some synergy with the offensive line as well. So our run game should be pretty good next year.
Yeah, I would think so. I certainly would think so. I think Tunsil's a little bit underrated as a run blocker. Like he's obviously a better pass protector than he is run blocker, and a left tackle, that's what you want. I think people think that he's just some terrible run blocker and they just overlook it because he's such good in pass protection. He's actually pretty good in the run game, especially if you're running like zone stuff. He has the athleticism to go reach guys on the backside that not a lot of guys can do. So I think he's a little bit underrated in that regard. But yes, that your point is a very good one. Like they are running it all back. They've got a lot of components coming back, and they should be able to stack from last year and build another level of the run game. This is just one more example from that same Titans game. Same look. He's going to motion across to that same fullback H-back spot, and this time instead of diving back inside, he's just going to go and kick out the guy on the edge. Again, same kind of idea, same kind of look that they're presenting to the defense, but Bates is doing a very different role within the scheme each time, and Brian Robinson does a nice job picking up a few yards there. So that's the kind of value that Bates brings to the run game. But that's not all he brings. Like he does bring we talked about the offensive line mentality. He picked up some real nice blocks in pass protection. We talked earlier with Sinnott with the chips, and we'll certainly get to that with Bates. But this play was one that stood out in my mind when thinking about John Bates. Like, this was a play action pass, and the Steelers sent a linebacker on a blitz up the middle, and they didn't really have anyone pick it up. Now, Austin Eckler was going to pick it up. Bates does a real nice job recognizing it and working inside. Working inside to pick it up. So we'll see. I'll just run it through here, and you can see Bates is going to see that linebacker blitzes. You got Allegretti is occupied by this defensive lineman. You got Tyler Biadasz occupied by this defensive lineman. Cosme is occupied. So all three interior linemen are occupied, which means someone else needs to pick up these linebackers if these linebackers are coming. Now, Austin Eckler is going to be one guy that should be picking those up, but he's also got to execute this play action fake. John Bates is the free guy that can come across, but that's a lot of, you don't typically see a tight end coming in to block inside in pass protection, right? But you can see here, he does a really nice job. Like, Eckler might be the guy that actually is responsible for that linebacker, and Bates probably would be responsible for this one. But Bates doesn't wait to see if Eckler can make his block. He's like, I'm going to go make this block and make sure this guy is not going to hurt my quarterback. And he goes and makes that block, stands him up, and actually blocks him into the other linebacker. So he gets a 2-for-1 there, and that gives Jaden Daniels that time to go and make his throw. And they pick up a first down as a result. In that same Steelers game, we talked about the chips. This isn't a chip. This is just him blocking TJ Watt straight up one-on-one. And it's a play action pass, so he has that kind of advantage. But it just shows that there is value to him as a blocker here. He goes and makes a nice block. Watt has to read if it's a run or a pass. So he reads run initially, and that gives Bates the upper hand on the play action fake to get into him and stack him up. And then Bates does a nice job just fighting hard. Like, again, you're not expecting your tight end to block their star pass rusher one-on-one. You expect that guy to beat him quickly. And Bates, he doesn't lose here, but the term would be losing slowly. He doesn't just get beat all ends up and allows Watt to turn the corner and chase down Daniels for a big hit. He fights hard. He is kind of losing. He gets the corner turned, but he holds on to him. He fights and keeps him there, and you can see Jaden Daniels is able to get that throwaway. And you can see these guys, the offensive linemen, struggle with their blocks a hell of a lot more than John Bates did. So that's just a really nice rep from Bates working against one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. And then as a receiver, like we talked about, 8 catches, didn't have a huge impact. But when you are such a blocking threat in the run game, you can do some nice stuff off of play action. And we saw later in the year, they got a little bit creative with what they were doing on the play action stuff. And they would do little play action passes like this, where there's a lot of misdirection. You see a guy motioning into the backfield, rolling around. You see Jaden Daniels faking a handoff, rolling out. You've got receivers running down the field, and you got pulling. The center is going to pull to the edge. That's all misdirection. And all that's going to happen is John Bates is going to fake block and then leak out here to the flat on the backside. And it's a really nicely designed play, and it's the kind of thing that everyone kind of just like Bates starts that block, and everyone's just like, okay, this is play action pass. We're working to Jaden Daniels on this side. You can see linebacker turn that way. This DB is focusing on the backfield. You can see the safeties all working out that way. You got, I think this is Luke McCaffrey down here occupying this corner, and you can start to see this little bit of space emerging over here. And John Bates is just going to peel off of his block and work straight into that space, and Jaden Daniels fires it back to him. And Bates makes that catch with space to potentially go and score a touchdown. Now, going into this year, this is where I'd like to see Ben Sinnott getting these kind of passes rather than John Bates. Ben Sinnott has that little bit more athleticism. He has that speed where he might just outrun this and go score, but he is also physical enough to go and fight through that tackle. Now, you love that John Bates goes and takes on that safety, but he didn't go and score, whereas I think Sinnott has the upside of potentially going and scoring there. So
were you a Sinnott guy coming out of the draft, Mark? I forget now.
I didn't watch him before the draft. After the draft, I wondered how much of an impact he would have year one, because I thought he was quite raw as a route runner. I thought I really liked the upside, the athleticism was there, the blocking willingness was there, and I think he developed nicely as a blocker. My reservation with him as a pass catcher was that, as you said, his production in college was all yards after the catch stuff. And you can do that to a tight end. You can get him those catches, but when you have a Zach Ertz, when you have Terry McLaurin to look after, when you've got pieces like last year, they had Zacchaeus running a lot of that stuff. They were messing around with 2 running backs, and Austin Eckler was getting a lot of those kind of short passes, picking up yards after the catch kind of stuff. Your backup tight end is going to be quite low down on the list of guys that you want to be getting in those situations, right? So I did wonder whether his passing game production was going to be particularly strong in his rookie year, and obviously it turned out it wasn't. But I think this year it can be. I think you can see that, like, the coaches have spent all offseason saying he's taken that step forward. He's a better route runner. He's kind of more into the offense. He understands things better. I think he can be a little bit more of a threat as a pass catcher, and obviously they brought in a guy like Debo who's going to get a lot of those yards after the catch things going his way. But I think you can do some of the things like I just talked about with that kind of fake block into that kind of leak concept where he's leaking out to the backside, or this kind of thing like we talked about previously. This is that same clip that we ended the Sinnott stuff. For the same thing for Bates, and this was just to highlight it was a nice play from Bates, doing that fake fullback, blocking and leaking out. This kind of thing I think they could do a lot more with Sinnott as well, from that fullback position. But yeah, that was I think he can be better this year than he was last year. I think the question will be how much Zach Ertz is able to play, because obviously that connection with Zach Ertz is huge. And they really like Zach Ertz, and they should, because he's been really good. So it's if they can get Zach Ertz off the field and resting him, and that gives Sinnott more of a chance, or whether they be like, okay, we want to protect Zach Ertz, we're going to give Sinnott more of a chance, and I think he could get some more opportunities like that. Or if Zach Ertz does get injured, and hopefully fingers crossed he doesn't, hopefully Sinnott is more positioned this year to be able to step up and play that kind of tight end 1 spot rather than kind of tight end 2 or tight end 3. So yeah, but that was the look at Bates as well. I hopefully was able to show the kind of value he has as a run blocker, because there is real good value there, and hopefully that explained why they were willing to sign to such a significant contract for what is just a blocking tight end. But hopefully we also saw with Sinnott that there's a little bit more to come from. He was better than what people thought he was in his rookie year. There's more to a tight end's game than just the number of catches he has, and there is value he adds to the offense as a blocker. But I think this year he's positioned to potentially take a step forward and have a few more catches and be a little bit more productive as a receiver as well.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing. I'm definitely interested watching the tight end room. I'm glad we started off with this. I do think Ben Sinnott is a very interesting player to watch this year. Then John Bates is invaluable. And I think with this Commanders coaching staff, with their front office, you can tell the investment into Jane Daniels, and it's the fact that, hey, we have an additional blocker for him in the passing game. This is going to help out in the run game as well. And I love the clip that you showed about John Bates showing the offensive mentality, that lineman mentality, and kind of scrapping it up with Queen. I'm actually going to clip that up, put that up in a second. So that's great. Regarding Sinnott, I'm curious what's going to happen with him. I think he has some talent. I think he is a good run blocker. You definitely exposed me some give me some exposure to his run blocking as well. But I don't know if you're hearing this, Mark, but like Colson Yankoff, man, he's having a pretty good training camp as well. I actually saw him get a lot of playing time when I was there watching it live with the ones. Maybe I just say fortunate bounce that one day that I was there, but I think he might get some exposure there too. I know they like him as well, but maybe Sinnott, we'll see what happens with him. To that end, Mark, we're going to wrap it up in a second, but obviously, guys, thank you for watching us. We had 1,000 people jump in on an impromptu show that we started off on a Wednesday, so thank you for that. I think what we're going to do is every Wednesday we're going to start moving forward with the film whenever we're both free. With that being said, Mark, what do you have working on your Substack right now, and what's coming down the pike?
Well, we're obviously a few days away from the first preseason game, so we're kind of just waiting for that first action of football that we actually get to watch, as opposed to just reading training camp reports. So yeah, hopefully see some of that preseason game and when that happens on Friday, and then break that down over the weekend and next week and get into looking at some of those, maybe the rookies or the undrafted free agents or the new additions, and seeing how those guys fared and maybe get some idea as to how this the initial 53 might shape up based on their first game.
It's going to be awesome. So what I'm hearing from you is a lot of Sam Hartman, Josh Johnson breakdown next week on the show. We're going to be looking at rookies, and then we're looking at some people coming up. And guys, I'm sure you follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Bullock NFL. Definitely give him a follow. I'm George Carmi at GCarmi21. We always collaborate offline. So if you have any ideas, hit us up. Hey, this would be kind of intriguing. We'd love to see this on the film room. That'd be great to do. In the meantime, definitely give Mark a follow on Substack. It's some awesome content. All his film breakdown is also in written form on that Substack. And I'm GCarmi21 on X. I do shows with Doug on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Big Doug and Carmi Show. Definitely give us a follow. Have a great night, guys. Enjoy your evening. I'll see you guys next week. See you guys later.